And I think that's actually a good time to begin. Hello, everyone. My name is Elton. I'm an assistant analyst at the Hague Center of Strategic Studies, and I'm here with Emma to help facilitate this lecture. Today, we have Olaf Kolkman with us, and Olaf Kolkman is the principal for the Internet Society. We had so much more to introduce as well. A lot of different achievements and experiences there. But Olaf did ask us to keep it short and hand it over to him for him to make his own introductions and begin. So without further ado, we're handing it over to Olaf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm waiting for the screen to be pinned to me because what I will do is I will use the screen, the video in which I'm presenting today, also as the sort of means to present the slides. What I'm going to talk about today is the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit, and that sounds like a very sort of, theoretical, technical type of thing. But it is a toolkit that we at the Internet Society have developed to see if any proposals that are made in the context of our digital society and to cope with the problems that we have in our digital society or the opportunities that we have in our digital society will impact the Internet. If you guys see me as a small block among many other little blocks with the letters of people, then I think you can click on this on the field and enlarge me. So if that is the case, please do so. Otherwise, I will go to a different way of presenting.
You should be spotlighted right now. Your screen should appear as on the screen.
Yes. I hope that is the case. Anyway, so I work for the Internet Society. I'm going to first describe a little bit about what the Internet Society is, who I am. So that's my first part of the presentation, and then I'll go into the the substance and the meat of the matter for the rest of the presentation. I work for the Internet Society, and the Internet Society is a global charitable organization that advocates for an open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy Internet for everyone. And all those words matter. Open means easily accessible, means an open architecture, means that it can be contributed by everybody. Globally connected means that it's globally connected for everyone. The internet is available to anyone globally to build with, to develop with, to consume on. It needs to be secure. It needs to be trustworthy, and it needs to be really for everyone. We still have a long way to go with that mission. The internet is consumed by roughly 6 billion people. We still have 2.4 billion people to go. And that mission of ours is to support the internet as a technical infrastructure, a network of network, which in the end is a resource that enriches people's lives and is a force for good in society. So we sort of start off with the technical, but the impact is on us, on humans, on the way that we live, in the way that we communicate, in the way that we prosper. So who are we? I work for the global organization of the Internet Society, but the Internet Society is a highly distributed organization. This picture doesn't quite capture it. We are 84 organizational members, that range from internet service providers, big tech organizations, but also SMEs that work with the internet. Our members, they pay a small fee, but the main income that we have comes from selling .org domain names. That's the main income that we have, and that makes us independent. We're not impartial, but we are independent. We form our own perspective and our own voice, and we share our mission with 128 chapters and special interest groups. I see a typo here in my slides. Special interest groups chapters are all over the world, and we have 136,383 individual members, and that was as of yesterday. What do we do? Essentially two things. This is from our 2030 strategy, which doesn't really differ from our previous 5-year cycle. We want to make sure that people everywhere have access to an affordable, reliable, and resilient internet. And again, all those words matter. We try to reduce the barriers. We build internet exchange points. We train network operators. We train people to take their destiny in their own hands if they don't get internet in their location. And we want to make sure that people everywhere have an internet experience that is safe, that's secure, and that protects them online. So things like privacy, confidentiality, trustworthy equipment, all those type of things come into play. And that's where we advocate for policies and technologies and commercial decisions that put people's, livelihood and security and so on and so forth as a priority. You have to apologize me. I have a little bit of a cold, so occasionally I will cough a bit. So what's the impact that we have? We just finished our previous 5-year circle, a strategy. Internet Society contains 2 parts, the Internet Society proper and the Internet Society Foundation. The second is a grant-making organization that does a number of things which are part of our strategy. It doesn't really matter, the Internet Society, whether you see Foundation or Internet Society, we're sort of the same thing. We have made over 100 statements, open letters and submissions to impact and guide policy making as on global level, as well as regional, as well as national levels. 50 policies and laws that we saw that had a negative impact on the development of the internet. We managed to convince the governments to walk back on those. We have published over 20 impact assessment documents, and that's what we are going to talk about today. What are those impact assessment documents? Why do we have them? And we have 6 amicus briefs filed. Amicus briefs are letters as friends of the courts where we went to court cases that impacted the internet, and we basically said, we are a friend of the internet. Here is our testimony of what a decision that you are about to make might have an impact on the internet. We do a lot of training, 15,000 people trained, 1,100 training sessions, 18 courses, trained a trainer, 145 ones. We do a lot. We have a grant making part of the Internet Foundation, and over the past 5 years, since 2020, we have granted over 63 million grants over more than 120 countries. We have a strong community in Africa. We have a lot of chapters, a lot of active chapters in Africa. Here I have made a screenshot of our apologies, of our sub-Saharan African chapters. This is where members organize, find themselves. If you go to the link on that website, you will perhaps find a chapter in your neighborhood and might be willing or interested to become a member of one of those chapters. And by becoming a member of the chapters, you also become part of the Internet Society as a global organization or movement, whatever you want to call it. I didn't say much about me. My name is Olaf Kolkman. I live and work out of Amsterdam. I'm currently in my Amsterdam office. I have a history in technical development. I call myself an internet specialist. I have been working in standardization in the Internet Engineering Task Force, which is the standards organization for the internet, for over 2.5 decades. I have contributed to the security of the internet. And I have made a journey from being a pure technologist to having an interest in policy, and my role at the Internet Society is principal of Internet technology policy and advocacy. And that means that I basically explain how the internet works to people, advocate around an open and global internet for everyone, you know, the mission essentially, because I deeply believe that the internet actually is an enabler for change in life, of life for people. And we need to do that in the right way so that, you know, people are empowered. That's for me, that's my driver, and that is where the advocacy comes in. Okay, lots of talking so far about our organization, about me. What I want to do now is talk a little bit about the internet way of networking. Now, first, I guess that one of the things that you might ask yourself is, what is the internet? If I talk about the internet, I mean something very specific, and I'm going to take a few minutes to give you an idea about what the internet is. So the internet is a network of networks. So it's a network, for instance, in your region that provides you internet connectivity, that gives you 4 or 5G or 3G networking on your phone. You connect to that network with your device. Say it's your phone or something. The network you connect to connects to other networks. Say 2 networks. Those networks might have different functions. They might have customers too, but they might also just say, we're connecting a customer network and node networks to the rest of the world. Some of these networks might, for instance, have transatlantic fibers or trans-Pacific fibers. Some of those networks might be privately owned. Some of these networks might be state-owned. Some of these networks might be the network of your research and education network. Might be, you know, a member of the Ubuntu net. Things like that. But the idea is that you have all these networks that are privately owned, independently operated, that are all connected to each other. But if I'm here connected to this network, talking to you through this device, this dropped off, but suppose that I am here talking to you, this is me connecting with my little screen over here, then suddenly there's this miracle happening that you perceive all of this as basically one big thing. And that thing is the network of networks. It is the internet. And we need to have collaborative sauce, technology, but also agreements on how to manage this network of networks in order to make that connection and that magic happen. And by doing so, we create somewhat of what I would say, a global commons. And that's magical. And when people make decisions about the internet, because they think the internet is you basically, the ability to send messages or share videos on Facebook or TikTok, and they make decisions based on that, they don't really understand this magic of the network of networks. And what we've tried to do with this internet way of networking is really capture the principles, the core properties of that network of network. What makes it work? And we've tried to do that, to try to capture those principles in sort of non-technical principled language. So let's when doing that, we sort of ask ourselves, this internet is incredibly successful. Over the last 25, 30 years, we have connected 6 billion people. And what are the critical elements of the internet that led to its success? And what do you need as critical properties to ensure that healthy evolution of the internet? And for us, this is sort of, a set of little building blocks. And by having those critical properties in place, the internet functions. And this is what we say in the second part. The internet owes its success not only to the technology, not only to having, in technical terms, protocols like TCP/IP. You might have heard of that. It doesn't matter. You can forget it immediately. But sort of the technology, all the magic of standards and so on and so forth. But it's also the way that it operates and evolves. It is the way that those network of networks collaborate to form a global internet. What do you need? What's the magic sauce? If you take away the magic sauce, the tower sort of, you know the game of Jenga where you have all these little blocks that you stack on top of each other. And if you pull away a block and you put on top, and you pull away a block and you put it on top, but at some point the thing becomes unstable. If you take it away, the whole tower collapses. And the critical properties are sort of that. Those are the things that you might be pulling away, and the tower might collapse if you pull too hard on them. Well, that's sort of the idea. I am going to explain those critical properties and where they came from. That's sort of the lecture that we are doing today. But if you want to read about this, then here's a link to the Internet Way of Networking. You can also Google Internet Society, Internet Way of Networking, and you find a whole set of resources that relate to our Internet Way of Networking. The Internet Way of Networking has 5 critical properties. They are depicted here, and I'm going to discuss them one by one. That's going to be the main part of the presentation. First, the internet has an accessible infrastructure with a common protocol. What does that mean? Well, oops, sorry for that. What does that mean? That was what I was saying. Well, going back to that image that I just showed, if this device here wants to talk to this device here, they need to speak the same language. Every device connecting to this network of network at multiple places in the architecture need to speak the same language. They have a common protocol. That protocol is called the Internet Protocol, IP, TCP/IP. I just mentioned that. That's a very technical term. If you don't speak a common protocol and you need gateways and you need translators, you create, well, gateways, just as I say. And those are places where toll must be paid, or conversions must be done, or capabilities are limited. The accessible infrastructure is another part of the magical sauce. Suppose that you want to start a network. You want to build a new network. You want to become an internet service provider. How do you connect to the rest of the internet? Well, it's very easy. You find one neighbor, you build your internet, you pay your neighbor a bunch of bucks, and suddenly you're connected to the whole of the internet. You become part of the internet by connecting to it. You don't have to make an agreement with every other party in this network. There is no treaty that you have to be part of in order to become part of the internet. No, you connect to the internet, you pay some money, and thereby you're part of the internet. That's magic. That's pure magic. Second one, it's an open architecture of interoperable and reusable building blocks. When the internet was designed, we didn't think about what were all the possibilities. We basically say there are a few principles that you use when you build things. It's sort of like a building code. The idea that you always have first the foundation of a building, and then you build a cellar, and a building probably need to have some plumbing and those type of things. Those are principles, but it's not very prescriptive in the way that you build the plumbing, in the way that you do the architecture. And that allowed people to come up with new inventions. One of the first inventions done on top of the internet in the mid 90s was the World Wide Web. The internet was built. People were sending files around with protocols like FTPs, and they were sending email with email programs, just like we do today. And then somebody in CERN in Switzerland came up with the idea to build an application called the World Wide Web. That was Tim Berners-Lee. He didn't have to ask permission to basically build that application. He just did it. There's a beautiful picture of Vint Cerf, who's credited as the inventor of the internet, and I hope you can see my full. Yeah, you can. Who's credited with the invention of the internet, with Tim Berners-Lee, who's the inventor of the web. Those are two different things. When blockchain was invented by Satoshi, whoever that was, he didn't need to ask, or she didn't need to ask permission to deploy blockchain on the internet. It was an overlay architecture that was just built on top of that open architecture with interoperable and reusable building blocks. And if you look at standardization, then you see that back. Third one is decentralized management and distributed routing. And I go back to that picture again. There is no center in the internet. Everybody here, every entity here, every network basically tries to understand how to get information from one network to the other, and there is a protocol, there's all kinds of technologies that make that happen, but there is no central control, and every network makes their own decision. That decentralized bottom-up management of the internet is a very important part. Fourth critical property is the common global identifiers. Common global identifiers means that if you type in a name, www.internetsociety.org, that name basically means the same in Amsterdam as it does in Cape Town. It's a common identifier, and we usually refer to this common identifier as the DNS. Very important property, because that makes the view of us humans towards that internet sort of uniform, and we have a similar understanding of it. Fifthly, the internet is a technology-neutral general-purpose network. It has not been built to do one thing specifically well. It's been built to do many things good enough. And an excellent example of that was basically, the consequence of that property is that it makes the internet very, effective at adapting to change. An example of that is when COVID happened. When COVID happened, suddenly everybody who was watching video started producing video. At least I understand this as more a Western world perspective than perhaps a global South perspective. But a large fraction of the users of the internet started producing video because they all jumped on Teams calls and Zoom calls and started, communicating with each other. We didn't need to redesign the internet for that, and all those networks in the network of networks took their measure to be able to deal with that. And it's really thinking very carefully about these type of properties that make the internet work, which allows us to also look at proposals that might impact these properties. And I don't have enough time to really explain all the ins and outs of that, unfortunately. I'm going to stop for a moment now and ask the moderators to see if there are clarifying questions at this moment.
Yes, at the moment, there are no clarifying questions, just minor questions that we've been able to resolve in the chat. If there are questions, again, we do have a Q&A channel that is available for you to write your questions. And if there are quick clarifying ones that I cannot answer, I will interrupt Olaf very briefly to ask them. Otherwise, towards the end, we will be either reading out the substantive questions from the Q&A channel or taking verbal questions from members of the audience. But no, at this moment, there are no clarifying questions.
Beautiful. And I see I have approximately half an hour time left. Do I? So 20 minutes.
Yes, exactly. And then if you wrap up in 20 minutes, there will be 10 minutes left for questions or whatever. Yeah.
Perfect. This is absolutely good. So what I just talked about, critical properties, was talking about this network of networks. It's sort of, basically the infrastructure. We're talking about a technical infrastructure and how to protect that. And if we look at a lot of proposals that we see passed by companies, proposals by companies or by governments, it is not often the case that they impact these critical properties and enablers. Fortunately, because those are the real those are the proposals that really hurt the internet. And some of these proposals have to do, for instance, with the ability to have encryption. Those are the proposals that stifle that sort of ability do impact the way that we create building blocks on the internet, and the way that those building blocks are deployed. So sometimes when we look at proposals, and you can do this yourself too, because we published a guide, and that's a few slides back. We published a guide on how to go about an impact analysis following this theory. However, this is basically a technology or an approach that will help us establish whether the internet is allowed to exchange or exist or evolve in the first time. If the critical properties are hurt, we basically at the end don't have an internet. Then we're pulling away the blocks in the Jenga tower, and the internet might collapse and not start to exist anymore. However, as I said, there are not that many cases that in our impact analysis we see that happen. But having an internet only, having this technical infrastructure is of course not enough. We want to make sure that when we use it, it's useful. And we define that usefulness in terms of open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy. Those are terms that we've seen a lot in strategic approaches towards the internet. And not coincidentally, those are also the words in our mission. We want an open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy internet. That's our mission. So when looking at a proposal, a policy proposal, we also look through the lens of these goals. And we have defined a number of enablers that enable the open internet, that enable global connectivity, that enable security, and that enable trustworthiness. And by looking through the lens of these enablers, you can also analyze a proposal. And again, I refer to our website where there are a number of examples of how to do this. It is a very useful tool if you want to understand whether a policy proposal makes an impact on the internet. Let's quickly go over this over these enablers. So open is a goal. An open internet allows people and organizations to mix and match technologies without permission, with minimum barriers. If you sustain and grow an open internet, it helps spur innovation. It's basically that idea that if of permissionless innovation, if you don't have to ask anybody for permission, but can basically build what you imagine, you can do a lot of things on the internet. And an open internet is also accessible because it's easy to connect and use the internet and use the services. You don't have to jump through hoops. You don't have to have a separate contract to, for instance, have an internet a connection over which you can do video, have an internet connection over which you can do voice, or over which you can do presentations. Basically, the internet offers you all these things. And of course, sometimes you may need to pay for a specific service, but there is no barrier to deploying that service or creating that service on the internet itself. So what enables that? Well, it's unrestricted reachability and available capacity. And available capacity, of course, is something that is very important. And this is also where we see a big disparity between global north and the global majority. It's sometimes very hard to get capacity in hard to reach places, or get capacity in places where people are economically don't have the economic capacity to pay. Unrestricted reachability means also that you can reach the service that you want. If you want to use a service in, say, an Arab country, you should be able to use that service. If you want to use a service in the US, you should be able to use that service. If you want to use a service or communicate to somebody elsewhere in the world, it doesn't matter where, that should be possible. That's that unrestricted reachability. Those are two enablers. We want the internet to be globally connected. And again, the internet is for everybody. The internet should be available to every single person on Earth. And we as an organization cannot connect everybody, but one of the things that we do as an organization is try to create models by which people can connect and make sure that it is a tool for communication, learning, and commerce, as we say here. So what are we looking at? What are the enablers for globally connectedness? Well, easy and unrestricted access. You should be able to connect to the internet. It should be close by. It should be, payable, affordable. Once it's there, an unrestricted use and deployment of those internet technologies is, of course, important. And we believe in the collaborative development, management, and governance of the internet. Communities that build their own networks should be able to connect to the internet. It's one of the many projects that we do in enabling communities to define their own destiny. Whether those are Sherpas in Nepal or schools in Florida of people that are have difficulties to pay the regular internet connectivity. We try to enable that, and we believe that these are enablers. So this is a way to look at policy proposals and say, is this actually bringing this type of property forward? Secure. Infrastructure should be secure, robust. It doesn't create insecurity. It doesn't. A secure internet allows people to trust the internet. That's the trustworthy bit, by the way. By having a secure internet, we increase the usefulness to the internet for all participants. In order to have security, we need to have data confidentiality of information, devices, and applications. So stuff needs to be secure. But we also need to make sure that there is integrity of information, application, and services. And if you dig deeper a little bit into these enablers, you get into things like security. How do you secure your supply chain? How do you make sure that hackers, either criminal hackers or script kiddies or state-sponsored hackers, don't abuse our information space? So there's a lot of policies that go under this moniker, and that we look at. Trustworthiness, very important. We say trustworthiness with a reason. Trustworthy is an inherent property of the thing. It's really worth of your trust. Sometimes people trust things they shouldn't be trusting because they are misinformed or something. So trustworthiness is a little bit more of a precise term. But trustworthiness comes, for instance, with expectations like reliability, resilience, and availability. But it also comes with the processes that lead to decisions being made in the governance of the internet. And accountability is a very important a piece of the puzzle towards trustworthiness of the internet. And of course, privacy is another part of that, of an enabler for trustworthiness. If you know that whatever people know of you in your private wheeling and dealing doesn't get spread all over the internet, then the internet is actually more trustworthy. So these are pieces that you can look at, enablers that you can look at, and understand how the internet might evolve under certain proposals. And that's sort of my last slide here. If we have this toolkit, the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit, Again, look at the link that was earlier in the presentation. And if you have an issue, you basically dissect it. You look at the internet way of networking. So do those critical properties, are those impacted? Because those are needed for the internet to exist in the first place. And then you look at open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy, and the enablers that make us reach our goals. Now, if you take those, sometimes there are tensions. For instance, the openness of the internet might conflict a little bit with the security and the trustworthiness of the internet. The fact that the internet has an open infrastructure also means that people can create software that is, basically malware, as we call it, software that can be used for hacking. And so there's always in those blue boxes here, open, global, connected, secure, and trustworthy. Those enablers usually have some sort of a trade-off, and identifying that trade-off helps you also understand what is in front of me and what is the impact on the internet. And our idea behind this internet impact analysis toolkit is basically to help people that have proposals that impact our environment, our internet environment, to help them go through the cycles of what is the impact on our environment. Just like when you build a road through a natural area, what is the impact on the environment over there? So that's a lot of talking from my side. I am done with my slide deck, and that leaves us time for questions.
Yes, thank you. So what we'll do first is I'll take a few 3 questions from the Q&A channel. Then I will take 1 spoken question from one of the attendees, a few more from written attendees, and so on. So the first 3 questions, because you wanted multiple at once from the chat, is that number 1, how are IP addresses allocated to new ISPs when it joins the internet, given that network expansion is decentralized? Question number 2 is about whether blockchain uses the same or similar infrastructure as the internet, and if so, can the same security measures, such as cryptography, be used to secure the internet? And then the third question is quite broad, so I'll make it a bit more precise. What's a way a country can protect the boundaries of internet use to be able to protect its citizens and sovereignty without causing significant side effect or undesired consequences? So those are the 3 questions in the beginning, and then, yeah, take your time answering them in whatever way you wish.
Wow, this is not a set of easy questions. Let me start with the first 2, because I think those are the most, well, somewhat easy questions. So suppose that you want to start a new network. Basically what you need is a bunch of infrastructure. You need wires, you need to connect people, you build a thing. And indeed the questioner says, how do I get those IP addresses that I need to connect to the rest of the world? They need to be unique. They need to be, I need to be able to connect to other people. IP addresses are one of those rare resources on the internet that actually need coordination, because 2 people having the same IP address means that things will collide in the end. So what happens is that IP addresses are assigned from a pool. The pool is maintained by an organization called IANA and distributes blocks of IP addresses to regional internet registries. There are 5 of those in the world. ARIN for North America, LACNIC for South America, RIPE-NCC for Middle East and former Europe, including the former Soviet Union republics, Afrinic for Africa, and APNIC for Southeast Asia and the Asian Pacific. And if you are in one of those regions and you need IP addresses, you go to that organization, you pay a small membership fee, and you will be handed IP addresses based on your needs. That's the theory. The practicality is that there are two types of IP addresses. So my first introduction about a common protocol, having a common protocol is already violated. We have two types of IP addresses, IPv4 and IPv6. IPv4 has the property that there is a maximum number of IP addresses in IPv4, which is about 4 billion. Well, do the math. We have more than 4 billion people on Earth, and that means we don't have sufficient addresses in the world. And indeed, IPv4 addresses are very, very scarce. So if you say, I want an IPv4 address now, you get a very small block of IP addresses when you start a new network. However, there are 340 trillion 340 trillion times trillion times trillion, or I might be off here by a trillion. There are many IPv6 addresses. And you will get IPv6 addresses too, by which you can build a network and connect to the internet. So you can get IP addresses. You go to your regional internet registry that will guarantee the uniqueness of your internet addresses. However, there's a complication because the internet has moved on. I should say that in Africa, there are still IPv4 addresses available through Afrinic. That was the first question. Blockchain. Blockchain offers a very specific type of security. It provides the security of integrity of data and sort of the history of a ledger. That's what blockchain does. It has it uses a proof mechanism, and basically you can prove that information is being published and not changed in time after it's been published on the blockchain. The blockchain or blockchains in general have a consensus protocol, which is determined by the blockchain technology. But the blockchain itself uses a mechanism to talk to the various nodes in the blockchain, which is also a known protocol. But that still needs internet technology. So the connections that are made between the blockchain entities are running over the internet. The internet doesn't care whether it's blockchain that runs on top of it or web pages or email. The internet just doesn't care. It's just packets of information that go back and forth, and that it happens to be a distributed ledger based on blockchain technology, that doesn't matter. Can you use the security technology that is being used in blockchain to secure the internet? Yes. The cryptographic primitives that are used to design blockchains are actually also used in internet technology. I don't have on top of my mind what exact, but basically hashing technology and those type of things are used. Blockchain is not a magic security sauce that you can pour over everything internet and make it secure. I am very skeptical about people who say blockchain will bring us all the security in the world. In order to make sure that we have integrity, confidentiality, redundancy, resiliency on the internet, we have to create a slew of technologies that enable that. And in some cases, blockchain might be a useful technology in very specific use cases. So far, so good. Can you repeat that? I was making notes, but I now see that my note is not complete, and the third question that you just had.
Yes. So the third question was, what's a way in which a country can essentially pass a policy to protect the boundaries of internet use in order to assist citizens and maintain sovereignty? Or are any types of kind of policies in this domain kind of full of risks and adverse consequences that may be unanticipated?
So I'm going to just first disclaim there is no magic bullet here. And I'm going to recognize that countries struggle with various forms of trustworthiness, safety, and security. We often see discussions around safety of users, like users using gambling websites, the safety of children if it comes to sexual abuse material, and the sharing of that. And there are no easy answers, because that open internet actually makes it very difficult to deal with those. And so when we talk, for instance, about abuse, or for instance, terrorist content, then governments often say we need to have more controls over what people get to see, and we actually need to be able to look at the private communication that people have on the internet. Hence, we want to have a backdoor in the security mechanisms that are deployed on the internet. That is a very dangerous and difficult question. The reason for that is that the internet is a global network. So the technologies that are available on the internet are available for us all or available for none. So if we talk about encryption, that is a very important technology to secure our commercial transactions, to secure our private transactions, to secure basically everything on the internet. If you take that away, because safety motivation, then that cannot be done for one specific country. If the Netherlands would say, okay, we need a backdoor in a specific security mechanism, then that backdoor would apply to a neighboring country as well, Belgium. We always make fun of the Belgians here in the Netherlands, so I can use the Belgians as an example here. I wouldn't want the Belgians to look at my traffic. I trust the Dutch. I don't trust the Belgians. To make an example, and we've seen this happen almost on a daily basis. Last week or 2 weeks ago, the UK basically said in a technical capability notice submitted by the Home Office of the UK to Apple, you have a specific technology that you're deploying on the internet, and that technology is basically if you store stuff in iCloud, if you make a backup of your telephone in iCloud, that technology allows that's to be encrypted in such a way that even Apple cannot see your data. That's zero trust architecture that they were deploying, which is a very good technology if it comes to the trustworthiness of the internet. The Home Office basically say, Apple, you're not allowed to do that. If you are going to deploy this, we want to have a backdoor. We want to be able to see what your customers store in iCloud, and we want to make sure that you are able to give us, evidence if we ask for it. At that point, Apple said, no, we're not going to give in. We're not going to deploy this zero trust technology in the UK, and they moved out. And these are difficult questions around, around safety and security of, interest of the state versus interest of the global user community. And this is a hard conversation. It's not a simple conversation. As the Internet Society, we have an opinion on this dossier. We think that encryption is good for people and states should not pull on it, but I understand the question. Sovereignty is something that also comes up in different discussions. In the Netherlands, for instance, we have a lot of discussions about should we rely on cloud technology like Microsoft Office? Should our government rely on Microsoft Office? Because that's run in the cloud on infrastructure that's ultimately under control of an American company. And people are currently worried about what might happen in the geopolitical situation there. So questions are being asked in our parliament, and discussions are ongoing. And those are difficult discussions that we should approach cool-headed. How can we create our own sovereign, how can we control our own destiny? I think that's the question that we need to ask when we approach these questions. And how can we do so in a way that doesn't impact the internet as a global infrastructure? That is the question that we constantly have to ask. We have this global commons called the internet, and we're coping with digital developments that have an impact on our lives, granted, but we have to be very careful to protect that network of networks and what makes the magic. I hope that answered your question and hopefully gives you some further thoughts. I see a lot of hands.
Thank you. So we are technically at time now at 6:15. However, as I mentioned before, we do have a 10 minutes that's typically reserved for a small quiz. However, I would, unless you feel with your cough and everything like that, like you'd rather round it off me here, that questions is more valuable. So happy to see that you agree there. This means that since we've taken 3 questions from the chat, I'm just going to go in order here of having raised hands for a verbal question. Let's try to keep the verbal questions concise so that we can get through as many as possible in these last 10 minutes. First on the list is Shungu. So I'm going to give you the ability to use your mic. So feel free to ask your question.
They also have to unmute themselves.
Shungu, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like Shungu is unmuted, but there seems to be an issue with the microphone on a hardware level. So we'll skip them for now, and we'll go on to number 2 in the list.
Thuso?
Thuso,
hello?
you should be able to speak.
It was a good lecture. Okay, I have only one question. I'm kinda here confused a little bit. Is it a VPN an example of an interconnection of different regional blockchains? That's only my question.
I'm going to answer that directly with a short no, but I will explain that later. So let's take the second question.
We'll take one more verbal. question, maybe? Yeah, so let's see. From Takunda, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak. Yeah, so you just have to unmute yourself, Takunda, and yeah, there you
go. Sure. So, thank you. I just have one question. I'm in the field of computer science. So I'm primarily concerned about the emergence of new internet technologies. And from the model that you were discussing today, I see that it's quite friendly to new innovations. And there's also the aspect of security and trustworthiness. But in most cases, when new technologies are released or when they're made that have to interact with the internet or that depend on the internet for their functionality, not a lot of people know if there are going to be unintended consequences of that. So how do you juggle that promoting the innovation without, but still ensuring that new technologies do not compromise these, even in a situation where there isn't much information about this technology and how it works? So how do you often balance that type of situation?
Thank you, Takuna. That's a very good question. Let me return to Tuso's question first. First, a VPN has nothing to do with blockchains. VPNs are overlay networks that use the IP protocol. So basically, you make sure that you hide whatever you are communicated from third parties. Make sure that everything is encrypted between you and your VPN endpoint. And there is nothing, basically, again, this is an application that uses the internet, and blockchain doesn't make part of that. If anybody says our VPN is more secure because it uses blockchain, I would be skeptical and critical. So that's sort of the longer answer to my previous no. Takunda, very good question. So we have all these new technologies. People can put things on the internet. They can develop new technologies. New innovation happens all the time. The internet continues to evolve. And sometimes that's difficult. The closer you get to these common identifiers and the common protocol, the more difficult it becomes. The transition from IPv4 to IPv6, I just mentioned that, basically means that we don't have this common protocol anymore. We have two. We have IPv4 and IPv6, but everybody sort of agrees that IPv6 is the future, and we have done a lot of magic to basically treat those two things as if they are the same. But that is more than 20 years of engineering, and it will take another perhaps generation. I don't know. My crystal ball doesn't work before IPv4 is migrated out and we have only IPv6, and we're back to the ideal situation of having one common protocol. But on top of that, we can change things. We used to have TCP and HTTP, TCP being sort of the connection, and HTTP being the protocol that web connections are made of. And fairly recently, like 5 years ago, a new protocol was invented called QUIC that is being used all across the internet. The people who deployed that were basically big tech players that could do a lot of testing. They had control over the browsers and control over servers. So they could do a lot of testing, and they made sure that they introduced this new technology in a way that would be beneficial to all users and didn't cause harm in the internet. But I hear you. If you are a small developer and you make a new webcam, or you create a new software or build an IoT device, and it's not secure, it can cause a lot of impact. And that is basically a common responsibility of us all. This is the reason why network operators have firewalls, so that it can turn off the most dangerous applications that spoof things on the internet. That's why we have processes by which bugs can be reported to vendors. And frankly, that is also the reason why, for instance, in the EU, and you can have various opinions about that, there is a regulation now that makes vendors liable if they bring broken software to the market. So again, no simple answers. All the simple answers on the internet have been solved. The best thing to approach these type of things, these type of hard questions, how do you introduce new technology without breaking the old one, and how do we as communities govern those processes? I haven't talked about the multi-stakeholder approach to internet governance, but that is what the internet multi-stakeholder governance is about. Every actor, technical community, private sector, governments, civil society, taking their role and trying to understand what is at stake and coming to steps in solutions that in wicked problems in our digital society. And that was a long-winded answer, perhaps, but I hope it helped you, Takundu.
Thank you very much for that answer. And it's a good time as well, because we're just about bumping into the 10-minute extension as well, which means that we're going to be closing the meeting now. However, if you have any final words or things you want to share, Olaf, you can go ahead and do that first before we end the meeting.
Do I have something to share? Not really. I think it would be a little bit tacky to show our you can fund us slide. But I do want to refer, you will be sharing the slides. We have a slide with our chapters. If you are interested in our work, join one of our chapters. They create, those are the communities where these matters are discussed. They are close to home. You can become a member of the Internet Society overall for free. We would welcome your membership. And of course, please have a look at the material that I referred to around the Internet way of networking and the Internet Assessment Toolkit, which are resources that are freely available on our website. In other words, we would be happy to see you follow us, and we hope that we can interact in the future.
Thank you very much. We usually only share the recordings with the attendees afterwards, but if we have your permission, we can also share the slides with them. Is that all right?
That is absolutely okay.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come here and give this lecture. I know we really appreciate it, and I'm sure all the attendees do as well. And with that, I'd like to wish you all a wonderful Wednesday evening. And yeah, see you all for the next episodes of the Cyber School lectures. Thank you.
And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.